Welcome to the Rap Soul Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of music that moves our hearts and gets our feet tapping. This is the intersection of rap and soul music from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. We appreciate you for listening. Share this podcast with a friend or family member who loves music as much as you do. The podcast is hosted by 12 Kyle. Next up, the Rap Soul Podcast.
Welcome to another edition of the Rap Soul Podcast. I'm your host, 12 Kyle. If you heard about this podcast on the playground, welcome and thank you. If you heard about this podcast from your nosy neighbor, welcome and thank you. If the schoolyard bully told you that he was going to beat you up if you didn't listen to this podcast, welcome and thank you. Again, I am your host, 12 Kyle, and this is the Rap Soul Podcast. This is the intersection of rap and soul music from the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. Again, welcome and thank you for coming. On this episode, I want to bring it current. I know we talk about the 80s and the 90s, and the group that I'm going to talk about on this particular episode is a group that I was introduced to in the late 80s, early 90s, and have been a staple in my life since. That is none other than the rap group A Tribe Called Quest. If you're not familiar, or if you've been hiding under a rock, at the time of this recording, A Tribe Called Quest was this past weekend inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And personally, I could not let this opportunity pass without me giving a salute and a shout out to A Tribe Called Quest. If you're not familiar who the members are of A Tribe Called Quest, let me tell you, Q-Tip, the late Fife Dawg, Ali Shaheed Muhammad, and Jerobi White, to be exact. To say that A Tribe Called Quest is a top 5 hip hop group is an understatement. They're in the top 5 and they ain't 5. Where you put them to me is really irrelevant. But honestly, I'm extremely biased when I say this. I think they're one of the best groups ever. And they're a group that I was introduced to in 1990, and I literally grew up with this group. Not in a sense of I knew them in New York, but I grew with their music, and their music really was a part of my adolescence, teenage years, and young adulthood. And I found myself really identifying with almost every rhyme, feeling almost every beat, and really being immersed into the music and the culture. So seeing A Tribe Called Quest go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame means a lot, because I know it wasn't something that they set out to do. I don't necessarily know that anybody in 1990 would say, hey, we're going to make an album and one day we're going to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Not these guys. And that first album blew me away. The first album was called People's Instinctive Travels and the Paths of Rhythm. For short, we call it People's Instinctive because nobody was saying all of that stuff. But I remember hearing songs like Bonita Applebum and I Left My Wallet in El Segundo and my favorite, Can I Kick It? And hearing those songs made me gravitate to this group. I think one of the things that I could identify with was that A Tribe Called Quest was so much different from what I had heard up until that point. They weren't street dudes. They weren't gangsters. They didn't threaten to beat you up. They didn't threaten to shoot you. They were far from NWA. They were far from the Ghetto Boys, but they had their own little niche. And I think they spoke to kids like me who were a little different, who weren't going to beat you up, who weren't going to shoot you, but cool kids. And cool kids who just enjoyed being themselves and being just a little bit different from the norm. And I think that's where my ties to that group fit in. And it seemed like with every song and with every album came the identification is that these guys are me. So if you're a fan like me of A Tribe Called Quest from maybe since day one, or maybe even the second album, you got the feeling of like these were your homeboys. And so while you celebrated their music and you relished in the fact that, you know, they were making great music and you were a part of it because you supported it and you listened to it often, if not all the time, you really felt like a member. So when Jerobe White was in and out of the group, you missed him, but it didn't really matter because you were a part of the group. Tribe always made you feel like each album was something for you. It was definitely something for you. They always talked about making music for the fans. And I think like every album was done just for that particular reason. That first album blew a lot of people away in 1990. It didn't sell a lot commercially, but it was, again, a groundbreaker. The second album, which came out in 1991, The Low End Theory, I was a senior in high school. And when I tell you that album spoke to me in many ways that I really can't even equate even to this day, with songs like Check the Rhyme and Butter, it meant so much. And it still means so much. And it's an album that I can never grow tired of listening to. Now, there may be a song or two that I'm like, oh, that ain't as good as I thought it was. But the cool part about it is it's still Tribe. And Tribe always made it feel like it was our album. So it becomes more personalized. And by the time 1993 rolls around and they drop Midnight Marauders, I was blown away. And I say that a lot, but I literally was blown away. Midnight Marauders to this day, I think is one of the greatest hip hop albums ever. I'm extremely biased, and I will tell you this, but I think it's one of the greatest hip hop albums ever. And it's an album that, for me, the more and more that I listen to it, the more and more I fall in love with it. And that's just who Tribe is. But again, they make music for their fans, so it feels like your album. Tribe was just different. They were different in the sense that you could tell that there was a friendship there. There was a bond. There was a brotherhood. But you could also tell that they really enjoyed making music. The music that they made was, hip hop influence, but it was also jazz influence. And they introduced, people like Ron Carter to me who I'd never heard of. And they sampled songs from people like Minnie Riperton that I didn't think you could pull a sample from. And so when I hear the music and hear how the music has aged, even when I go back and listen to it now, it doesn't feel dated. It feels just as fresh as it did in 1991 or 1993 or 1990. And then by the time 1996 rolls around, they give you Beats, Rhymes, and Life. Now that album was a transition album because Fife wasn't on it as much. And I think one of the things that I think every Tribe fan will tell you is that the difference between album 1 and album 2 was Fife was rhyming his ass off on the Low End Theory. When he comes on Bugging Out, that was it. It was a wrap. And I think that's the thing that separated Tribe from a lot of other groups. They got progressively better. Now, Beats and Rhymes of Life wasn't, in my opinion, as good as the first 3 albums, but it was a cold ass album, production wise and everything. And I think it's a testament to where they were and where they were growing. Now, if you saw the documentary that they put out, they were going in separate directions. And ultimately, the group broke up. But they got back together for the Love Movement in 1998. And the Love Movement, I thought at the time was like a throwaway album. It was like, okay, well, we got one last run in us. Let's do this for the fans and let's just put it out there. And the Love Movement, I think, especially as I revisit it, is better than what I remember. And it's still a cold ass album. And it's still Tribe. And even if it's not Tribe's best, Tribe's less than best is better than most. Let me just put that out there. But I love all of the albums. I love the members. It was a journey, and it's always been a journey. And from Electric Relaxation to God Lives Through to Once Again, they gave you song after song, hit after hit, and it was just Tribe, and it was Tribe and their fans, and it was about us, and it's always been about us. But it's been about them, but it's been about them and what they did for us. And if you're a fan like me, you felt the music. You always felt the music because you felt like the music was for you. Like when I hear these albums and I hear some of these songs, it sounds like it was specifically made for me to hear that particular song on this particular day. And everybody doesn't make music like that. And what's refreshing is when you go back and listen to it, at least for me, it still feels that way. So it feels like a gift. It's the gift that keeps on giving, if you will. And you all know, in 2016, the group suffered a devastating blow by losing Fife Dawg. I've talked about it before on my flagship podcast, the 12 Kyle podcast. And I've done album reviews on almost all of their albums. But the loss of Fife, who passed away in 2016, March 22nd, 2016, I'll never forget. One, it was on my wife's birthday. But it was the first, I can honestly say, and I've said this before, and it's worth repeating, it was the first time a celebrity passed and it really affected me. I mean, like, it hurt. Like, it hurt me really bad that Fife had passed away because we knew he had diabetes, and we know he had been in and out of the hospital and stuff like that. But again, I didn't think he was, gravely ill. But his passing, affected me. And, it was, like I said, the first time. And it still kind of bothers me to this day because it's like, personally, I felt like I lost a friend. I don't know. I never met Fife. Never been to a Tribe concert. But there's a connection there between me, Fife, Q-Tip, Jerobi, and Ali Shaheed Muhammad. I've never met these men before in my life. They probably could walk down the street and I might not even recognize them if they got on shades and a hoodie. But there's a friendship, there's a kinship, there's a brotherhood that we're shared through the music. And all of Tribe's fans feel this way. The real Tribe fans. Let me just put it like that. But Fife's passing definitely was rough. But we got a shot in the arm, if you will, when Tribe gave us their last studio album, which featured Fife. We got it from here. Thank you for your service. A beautiful swan song to A Tribe Called Quest as a group. Little did we know, before Fife passed away, they were working on a new album for their fans. And it's just a testament to who Tribe is and who they've always been for us, and more specifically, who they've been for me. So I am happy. I got a chance to see them go into the Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Again, that's not something that rappers look forward to. That's not something that they shoot for. But I'm happy for them. I'm happy for all Tribe fans. I'm happy for Fife and his family. Unfortunately, Ali Shaheed Muhammad could not be there. But at the ceremony, they were introduced by Dave Chappelle. Q-Tip was there, Jerobi White was there, and Fife's parents, as well as Fife's wife. Again, it was great to see. It was great to see. So their service has been completed. Q-Tip is still making music. Ali Shaheed Muhammad is still making music. I think Jerobi's still making music to some degree. There probably will never be another Tribe Called Quest album, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with what they gave us. because they gave us beautiful music. In my opinion, they gave us a couple of classics. And y'all know me, I don't throw that word around. But I'm thankful, and I gotta salute them. And I'm happy to say that they are now members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that's a lot to say for a dope rap group from Queens. That's going to do it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for checking out this edition of the Rap Soul Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Monday at midnight. Share this podcast with a friend. Please, ma'am, please, sir, share this podcast with a friend who loves music as much as you do. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. Download, subscribe, hit the like button, and that way you get updates when the podcast will drop, because sometimes the audio comes out, the visuals come out before the audio. The great thing about the YouTube is that we have both audio and video. If you're on social media, follow us, the Rap Soul Podcast. We're on Twitter X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and TikTok. We also have a Reddit page, Reddit/Rap Soul Podcast. If you'd like to continue this discussion and take it over to our Reddit page, you can do that as well. If you'd like to make a financial contribution to the Rap Soul Podcast, hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. Again, that's going to do it for me. Shout out to the Tribe Called Quest. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.
Thank you for listening. This concludes the episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Follow the podcast on social media. And feel free to continue this discussion on our Reddit page. More importantly, share this podcast with a friend or family member who loves music as much as you do. Until next time, 5,000.